28 seconds.
27.
26.
25 seconds.
24. 23.
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
22 seconds. 19.
18.
17 seconds.
16.
15 seconds.
14.
13 seconds.
12. 11.
10 seconds. 9.
8.
7.
6.
What?
Copy.
5 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, welcome to Subspace Chatter, where we boldly discuss Star Trek. Today we're talking about the Lower Decks episode Reflections. So let's go around and do introductions first. I'm going to start with, I guess, I love bad Star Trek.
Hi, my name is Vanessa, and I host a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
Hi, it's Captain Mike. I am a Facebook group run administrator. I run 2 groups, actually. It's Star Trek Early Voyages, which is based around the early stuff for the Enterprise with Pike and Kirk, and also Worlds of Tomorrow, which is just a general science fiction group. Nice to be here.
Dan?
Hi, I'm Dan Lackey, editor of WarpFactorTrack.com.
And today I'm hosting. I'm Eve Zellick, and I'm the director of the Starfleet Academy College of Music. So let's get into the questions, and we'll watch the chat in case something comes up there. So the first question we have, why would Starfleet want to cover up Rutherford's past when it was Rutherford's own carelessness that caused the accident? And we'll start with Vanessa.
Thanks. I think what they wanted to do was use Rutherford as sort of an experiment for the implants that he had, and they wanted to use him to sort of, like, they saw the raw talent in him, but he's obviously a careless person. So in order to sort of keep him in line and also take advantage of his talent, they put in these implants to sort of make him like the ideal Starfleet officer. Maybe.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm still setting up.
You can't hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, but what was the question?
The question was, why would Starfleet want to cover up Rutherford's past when it was his own carelessness that caused the problem?
Well, I don't think we've got the answer to that yet. I think it'll be later in the series.
So no speculation?
No, we don't have any way to know. So speculation would be illogical.
Captain Mike?
Something to do with his engineering talent, what he was working on, I suppose. But as Dan said, we don't really know what that is. But something in that direction, obviously, some kind of Black Ops project of some kind that he must be tied to. But, I guess they need to dig into that more as time goes along. But something in that direction.
So like Manchurian Candidate?
Oh, maybe. I didn't realize till like recently rewatching episodes that like the cold opener teaser, the dream or nightmare that he has actually like ties into that mystery.
Yeah, I like that. That cold opening was a really good way to bring that episode in and point in the direction of there's going to be serious character development going on here. We're going to dig into somebody's psyche, I guess, is what it ends up being at the end of it all.
I thought it was cool what they did with the music in the teaser as well, because like so often like the music changes between like what's been, but this is like such a gradual transition to the opening of the theme tune. I thought that was cool.
I want to say that I think on one hand, the implant he has could be something similar to what Geordi has, considering it does deal with the eyes. But at the same time, it also reminds me of almost that Google Glass type thing we see in Deep Space Nine that the Vorta wear to guide the ships. And at the other part of it could be, I have to wonder if they're experimenting with Borg technology. Because the Borg usually always have an eye implant of some kind. And by the time we hit lower decks, they would have access to some Borg things. So I have to wonder if it's like, it almost feels a bit like Deadpool, like there's some kind of nefarious conspiracy here.
Well, bringing up the Borg tech's pretty interesting because you see it poked at a lot with the Romulans playing around with Borg technology, like in a Black Ops development kind of cycle. So the Federation doing something similar, I mean, it's not far-fetched.
We'll look at Picard. In Picard, they're experimenting on Borgs. Even the humans are doing things with the Borgs, so.
Right. Well, regarding the optical technology, I think it's interesting that not only do you see that like so often with Rutherford, he wears the eyepiece or whatever, but there's quite often like seems to be like a recurring character who's got like a visor that looks like identical to Geordi's as well in the Cerritos.
That's a good point.
That's the engineering gal from the other episode. She popped up a few times there. Geordi visor, and I like that. I'm like, oh, what a great Easter.
Especially because they said a lot of people couldn't wear visors.
I thought it looked a lot like Data's positronic net, especially when they were sort of reviving him, the sort of twinkly Christmas light effect that they have on there. So that's why I think it's a positronic experiment personally. But it, I could see the Borg thing happening too.
Honestly, I have to wonder how it doesn't violate some of the laws about like engineering humans.
That's genetic engineering.
Yeah. So it's like, is there anything about cybernetics? Is that a thing or is that valid? It's an interesting space to go into to explore because they haven't really touched too much on ethics around that kind of thing. Because I don't know, I'm a fan of alien movies, and there's a big thing about artificially created beings and like, laws against it and pushback from society in those movies. And it's like, what does the Federation think about it if you were to rebuild half a person as a robot? Is it relevant, or is it something they would only do in the situation where it was a medical necessity or something like that, right?
Well,
like
that sort of thing happens at the end of Picard season 1 and in Discovery seasons.
Also, Picard gets replaced in total as a cybernetic being, and
that's what I was referring to.
Picard's a replicant.
So it's sort of like they're not okay with genetic engineering, but they might be okay with cybernetic enhancement. And whether or not it's consensual is the issue, I guess.
That's a good point, because in Rutherford's case, it doesn't seem like it was consensual that he got this implant, but he thinks it is. And then there's another layer of morality.
Exactly. Perfect point. There's a lot of questions about how he ended up like that.
Oh, somebody actually just said too, they replace parts of Bareilles' brain in Deep Space Nine to save him. That's true.
Right.
So thank you for that comment. And
it gets into ethical stuff there too, where it's like Bashir's getting mad. Like, I don't want to just make you into a zombie.
Or when they weekend at Bernie's, the other guy.
It's kind of reminding me of Spock's brain as well.
Yeah, Spock's brain. Yeah. Okay, so our next question was: were the points in defense of Starfleet that Boimler brought up during his rant strong or even solid? And we'll start with Captain Mike. We'll go backwards this time.
Sometimes I think he was justified. Other times it's like, I don't know if he was just a volcano of anger venting on people, because I mean, we've all snapped at times in life, and maybe he was going a little over the top with some of that stuff, but I guess the odd time he was on point with it. Like, I mean, the Borg and the Dominion definitely needed to be stopped. He didn't need to be as harsh about that as he was, though. But I think he was hit and miss. At times he might have been a little excessive launching personal attacks on some of these groups, but
I like that volcano of anger.
Yeah, I actually played around with the scene, and I think I I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Kill Bill films, but there's this Ironsides noise. It's a siren that plays every time she snaps and tries to take down one of the assassins that made the big hit on her wedding or something in that movie. And it's like this snap noise. And I just keyed that music in on that video and created like a continuous loop where it adds the ending bit where, what is it, Ransom comes in and sees him at the end and he's just stomping on the desk. I failed the Kobayashi Maru test 34 times. It's like justifiable anger, but maybe he's been bottling it up a little too long. Some of his ranting made sense. Other times, I don't know if he was lost in anger and incoherence was setting in. It's hard to say. Some of that floats into the background in that scene, and you don't even know what he's talking about. Because it actually just refocuses on the fact that Mariner's doing her job, and doing a good one.
Helped out by Boimler's rant.
Yeah, he was surprisingly, him doing what she usually does, going over the top, actually helped him this time.
Dan?
Well, I didn't realize it before, but like, yeah, while this discussion's been on, it's been like, wow, it totally reminds me of some like really, really early like TUS stuff that happens, like people just going crazy, or what we think is crazy. Just, I guess, also in like I think it was the first episode of Discovery, the guy that gets like blown, or no, it's the second episode. Where there's this big space battle, and the guy's like, what's going on? We shouldn't be out here, and then he's like blown into space.
Vanessa?
Like, I think his emotion sort of took over, and he sort of like used Starfleet as a way to sort of articulate his own feelings of frustration and anger. But he sort of like, it was righteous indignation, but I think it was pointed in the wrong direction. And like some of the points that he brought up specifically were like, well, we saved you, but it's like, you're Starfleet, you're acting on behalf of the Federation. The Federation asks that people join in exchange for protection. So you're sort of like talking about resenting that responsibility, but it's like you took on that responsibility being in Starfleet to being a protector for these worlds. And so it's like, I don't think this is about Starfleet. I don't think his frustration was actually in defense of Starfleet. I think he just sort of like is a very like anxiety ridden person, and anxiety ridden people tend to like rant about things that may be not necessarily related to their anxiety, but they're just passionate about the thing. Part of why I have a YouTube channel. But yeah, like I just related to him very strongly in that moment, but I don't think his arguments were that strong.
But I think like Ransom takes them as being like in defense of Starfleet, and I think like therefore like the outcome of what he does is like it's taken to be, interpreted.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of a certain original episode where they're with I believe they're with the Klingons, and they are hearing insults about the crew and stuff like that. And Scotty manages to hold his temper until the very end when they insult the Enterprise, and then he
called it a garbage scow.
and Kirk thanks him for defending like Starfleet the ship, and he goes, "It wasn't that. I was fine until they called her a garbage scow." And then he goes up, and that in a way kind of reminded me of Boimler a little bit too, because you see poor Boimler, and he's very much too eager to please. His whole identity is Starfleet,
There's a trigger moment, both situations trigger moment.
Yeah.
Should be hauled as garbage, and then reaches in, grabs his pip. Like he snaps. He's gone right there. Don't mess with his pageantry. This guy loves Starfleet. Don't touch his uniform. He's gonna hate you for that so much. And it was like, wow, he really went right where he needed to go with it, because he really enjoys protocol and pageantry in Starfleet. It was something to watch.
We all
it
know
sort of
somebody
keeps him
like
in
that.
check. You know,
Yeah.
I really wonder, without the rigor of Starfleet, like where would Boimler be? You know, without somebody telling him what to do all the time because he's so uncertain of himself. Where would he go? You know?
Yeah, I
So
always seen
yeah,
him as
I
a
could absolutely see like the taking of the pip was like that's the last straw.
yeah. This is my identity. Leave my stuff alone.
And we all know somebody like that. I mean, whether at work or in school or in like a club or whatever, we all know somebody who's like so hardcore and it's their whole, like it's everything that they are. And and there's only so far you can go. And once you go, it's bang, they go off like a firecracker and that's it. But I mean, I honestly think Boimler needed to erupt. I mean, the poor guy, like, how long was he holding this in?
Mhm. It was good for him to get those words out because he's usually the guy who plays peacemaker, mediator. Everybody, let's try and do our jobs the right way. And here he is, just tip of the spear, freaking out. Where the person who's usually responsible for that kind of behavior is conducting herself brilliantly, signing up as many applications as she can get her hands on.
Yeah, that it was interesting, a sort of like role switch that they took
Yeah.
on in this particular episode. Like that's growth to me, and that's part of what made it good.
Yeah.
Because I thought, I guess right from the start, like Bongler is supposed to be like the Miles O'Brien character or whatever, where the writers just like take glee in having like bad things happen to him, like he's swallowed up by that huge, I think it's like spider sort of thing in the very first episode. I was like, is that leading to just terrible things happening to him?
All right. So our next question was regarding Rutherford. How does this version of meeting a double stack up against classic versions like Transporter Malfunction, Mirrorverse, Evil Twin, etc.? And this time to be different, we'll start with Dan.
How does it stack up? It's quite balanced, I think. I think it's almost like about to fall down, but yeah, it's balanced enough.
What are your thoughts, Vanessa?
I think it kind of reminded me a bit of The Enemy Within, where it's just completely just so opposite, even though I'm, not a huge fan of that episode, but just the characterization of that person. But it's not an evil twin, it's a younger version of himself. It is him. It's not a twin. It's not like a person birthed out of his subconscious. So it's really interesting to see like a less mature, less refined, version of that character. And like the implant, that sort of lends credence to me that the implant's job is to sort of modulate his behavior. Throughout the series, it's like you get these hints of like, oh, my thing is malfunctioning, so that's why I'm da da da. Like it sort of like explains a bit of his behavior. So yeah, it's really compelling to see. I think it stacks up really brilliantly because it's less of a twin and more of a younger version that's so different from who he is now.
Captain Mike?
I think of kind of like the lore data dynamic. They're just so diametrically different in how they approach people. It's very much a parallel to some of this with because this Rutherford, he's just so malevolent, this evil, buried, suppressed memory version of him. And it's just, he's like there are some pretty savage bits in there. Like, I really like Barnes. She's a great character. And then this guy makes a really mean pass at her in the hallway and then just burns her hard with a horrible insult. Leaves her in tears. I hated that guy right there. I was like, man, that character is driving me nuts. I love that Helm girl, and this guy's got to get off her back. She's great. What the heck is this all about? And like, you're drawn right into the whole mystery of it. Like, why is he so chip on the shoulder compared to, like, okie dokie, I'm the nicest guy in the world, to like, F off, you're a loser. It's like, whoa.
Oh my God. Have you seen the episode of The Simpsons when Ned Flanders loses it? when he's
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
like it's so that
Suppressed suppression, very much central theme in both of them is suppression and a part of you that's been buried. I there's an anime I watch that the movie of it has something like this too, a suppressed memory thing where there's a portion of somebody's personality sectioned off in their mind. Same concept, and just like it's always interesting when you like something like that with a buried aspect of your personality. There's an old movie with John Lithgow from years ago, I think, Raising Cain, and it kind of gets into that similar kind of thing where multiple personalities and how it can affect your life. And this is definitely dealing with split personality stuff that could be relatable to people in the audience. Even look, they're using technology to kind of create that, but it's the same concept. Like there's a buried aspect of him, and then when he re-embraces that, it causes all kinds of psychological issues for him in this episode. So it was interesting, definitely, to see how like meeting a darker version of yourself would affect your psyche.
I think it goes back as well to I think is it the start of season 2 where Boimler has a twin, something like that.
Yeah,
and
that was like what was it? Brad.
transporter thing.
Yeah, Brad, and
Yeah.
it's like it's the Thomas Riker joke being played
Yeah.
with him. Yeah,
I thought
and
it's
that was
also
like
interesting.
yeah,
that
he was
they
like
say-
exemplar, and Riker loved him or something, and
Mhm.
then he gets put back on the B team or whatever.
I thought it's interesting as well that they say because after watching the episode I was like I didn't pay attention to like when the younger Rutherford is supposed to be, and then I rewatched the episode and specifically says he's like from a decade earlier. I thought it was quite interesting that they put a particular time on it. Time thing.
That kind of gave me two sort of throwbacks. One, when Vanessa said a younger version of Rutherford, I was actually thinking of the Orville, where we get to see a younger version of the first officer. And then the whole evil personality thing, like there's something else in there, reminded me a little bit of Jean Grey in the X-Men, the separated personality that Jean Grey the Phoenix had. As Jean Grey, she's this nice, kind doctor, patches everyone up, really smart, has a little bit of power. But as the Phoenix, she's something completely different.
Or or the Wanda and the witch.
Oh, Scarlet Witch?
WandaVision?
Yeah.
I was just watching Multiverse of Madness last night, a clip from that actually, and yeah, she's like she sees herself, and like the more well-adjusted, happy version with children basically absolves the like dark Scarlet Witch, twisted version of herself, and just says like, "I'll take care of these kids, but they're not yours, so you better go back to where you belong." Another one I was going to mention too was I mentioned Alien movies earlier. Walter and David 8 in the Alien prequels are dark. One's a darker reflection of the other one. One's more moral, kind of similar to Bishop in the original Alien films, where he's a good guy robot instead of like kill all humans, which is kind of more what David would be. But yeah, it's just like you say, there's always that dark reflection. That's just, I guess that goes back to the Data Lore thing. One of them's kind of benevolent to human beings. The other one, not so much.
The psychopathic personality coming out too reminded me a little bit of I don't remember the episode, but Jadzia and Joran Dax.
Mm-hmm.
Because Joran was so violent and so horrifying, and in a way, is still supposed to be part of her part of the Dax personality.
What I loved about that was sort of like the Trill's sort of cover up too, where they covered up that the murder was a past host, and that was like really important to sort of maintain their pristine reputation.
Yeah,
because like Duran's in like several like I was thinking of Equilibrium and Facets and stuff like that, but probably the main one you're thinking of is Equilibrium.
Yeah, I'm bad with titles, you know that.
What was it? Yeah, I'm terrible with them too. I just know that usually what's going on in an episode more than what actually the name was. I'm like, the one with the guy and the thing and the stuff.
I was telling like a friend this like for having like written for Memory Alpha for years and being like an admin there for 6 years and stuff like that. Like I totally memorized like all the names of the episodes. So, but basically, like for me, it's just like trying to remember the modern ones. I'm like, well, that likewise. That
It's so
lower
heavily
decks one was-
serialized.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, most of them are.
Okay, so our next question, this should be fun. Why would Starbase 80 be so bad, and why would Mariner be worried about it? So we're going to start with Vanessa on this one.
It's unusual for Mariner to be worried. So it must be something pretty, where I think it's partly because she's away from the safety net of her mother being a captain and, possibly being under her father's purview as well, where she would be under somebody else's command, even like changing the responsibility of her trajectory from Freeman to Ransom made her concerned, because it's like, oh, my mom's not just going to let me get away with things anymore. Oh, okay. And then Ransom threatening her further with like taking her off the ship. I think taking her off the Cerritos would essentially end her Starfleet career. That's what she's worried about, probably.
But to be fair, Boimler was also worried about Starbase 80, so it has a reputation.
And yeah, Ransom like sort of admitted that as well.
Yeah, so Dan, what are your thoughts?
I don't know if you've seen I don't know if you've seen More Tribbles, More Troubles and the animated series of Star Trek from the 70s. But basically like they eat tribbles. These aliens and more tribbles. So maybe like the Starbase is like just full of them. Who knows?
Full of triples?
No, they're called something else. I was trying to remember what they're called.
Okay. I don't know.
I can't. No, it's not Grobblers because that's Grobblers or in Counter Farpoint, but it's something like that.
Captain Mike?
I just found it interesting. I just liked the fact that Ransom is staying on her, like with this whole directive he's been given by, Freeman did a great job setting him on her, because like it was great to see that he was still there with it, using this whatever horrible punishment it is to be on this basis. So it's good to see that he's still using the stick, because the carrot just doesn't work with this officer, and trying to get her to play ball. I mean, she's been up and down and up and down. She reminds me of Tom Paris, the way she's yo-yoing up and down the ranks like this. It's like, so do you want to be a lieutenant, or do you just want to stay an ensign forever? And it's like a psychological break in the character that makes her really interesting. So it was nice to see Ransom flogging her with this ominous, I don't know, whatever the heck's on Starbase 80 thing. I don't know, waste cleaning. She seems to just hate doing any sort of cleanup duties when it gets brought up.
Who likes doing that? Who likes doing that?
Maybe it's a waste cleaning station, and that's
Or
why she's just like, oh my god.
Well, I thought maybe obviously we've all seen like the Tribbles. So I thought maybe when Kirk is likened to Danubian slime devils, so maybe it's full of Danubian slime devils that leave actual slime that that Mariner doesn't want to clean up.
I had kind of a different theory on this one. And this might be because of my background in teaching, but in the school system, there, at least here in Calgary, we have a couple schools that have a reputation, and they're like the last resort schools that kids are sent to when they're like, so they've been suspended too many times, or they've done something and they've been expelled, so other schools won't take them. And so they go to these schools as kind of a last ditch effort to educate them. So I kind of was thinking maybe Starbase 80 is where they send like the absolute washouts that they can't get rid of. And that they basically send them there. They just maybe have menial tasks like paperwork to do all day or something, and something they can't screw up. But to me, I kind of got the impression that it might be a starbase of screw ups, essentially.
Or, yeah, it might include like people who have become just like obsessed about winning the Kobayashi Maru.
Oh,
never able to do it.
Well, what was it? I think it's in Star Trek Online. There's this station that's plagued by these dimensional aliens. I think they're from a TNG episode, the Davidians or something like that. And it's basically like a ghost, like a haunted station kind of thing. could be something like that.
Maybe
I know
like,
that was a spooky place in the game.
maybe like
Or
the
like-
self-repairing station in Enterprise.
Yeah, or like Tarot, or not Tarot Nori. There's another one that's in DS9.
Centoknor?
Empok Nor.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the abandoned stations, the sister station. Yeah.
Okay, so next one. With regards to the archaeology woman, did anybody get vibes thinking about Vash from TNG and Wolverine during his flashback, Rutherford's flashback? So we'll go with Captain Mike.
Yeah, definitely the thought of Vash. Another thing that came to mind was Picard on his archaeological runaway. That whole thing with Richard Galen or whatever, his professor, right? And he goes off on that quest to follow up on his work, and I think that's when they discover the progenitor species, where it's like they show all the different races have descended from a general humanoid, and it's Salome Jens who played the changeling later on, and she's in a like kind of a similar makeup.
Vanessa, you look like you're gonna burst. Go ahead.
That episode drives me nuts. Okay.
I never said it was good. I just brought it up. That's all I did.
We know all the actors are people. We don't need to con it into the show that like all the
Actually, TOS hand waves it away perfectly. They're like similar planets theory, similar development theory.
Yeah,
let's not think too hard about this, people. It's science fiction.
Sort of like,
fiction.
Look at humanoids as the blank, to sort of like say, look, humanoids are basically the blank template upon which almost all aliens are written. It's just silly to me. But yeah, anyway, that's getting way off topic.
It's bad. Like the Orville falls into that trap too. Everybody's got a new forehead every week, right?
Although with the Orville, I think they're doing that on purpose because part of the Orville is supposed to be parodying Star Trek.
It's not a parody. It's an homage. Homage. It's pretty well done too. Actually, this third season's been pretty good with the writing, hitting a pretty good.
Yeah,
good level. I actually enjoyed both shows in the summer. In the summer, I loved both shows. Strange New Worlds and New Horizons were both great. It was a lot of fun watching 2 episodic shows like that.
Yeah,
I hadn't seen an episodic science fiction exploration in a long time like that. This was fun.
Dan?
Yeah, so like I thought of Vash, but not on my own cognitive process, basically, because like the reviewer of this episode for Warp Factor Track likened her to Vash, Lara Croft, Bernie Summerfield, which is like an audio spin-off from Doctor Who, basically, and also I've noticed people have been likening her because she's the independent or indie archaeologist to Indiana Jones.
That's the white elephant in the room. I was figuring people would say that one for sure, you know.
I just got a sense of Vash from her because something about her seems dishonest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Indiana Jones and all those people, Lara Croft, Vash, they're more opportunists than archaeologists because they're not really like studying. They're like stealing things in order to sell them. So it's like, it kind of that always cracked me up that they called Indiana Jones an archaeologist because he's a looter. He's
a grave robber
that happens to be a professor, but and aren't most of them.
He's basically a historical Robin Hood. He's stealing artifacts from people to give back to like museums or something. I guess that's kind of what his idea is.
But do you think that Patra Aberdeen in this episode of Lower Decks is actually an archaeologist?
I just didn't think of the character, the Vash sort of callback as an archaeologist. More like she's literally got a stand set up to sort of sell her wares. So that's not. Yeah, archaeology is something else.
Yeah, she runs into that place as soon as Boimler starts freaking out and steals something. She's a thief. An archaeology thief.
So it's
To be fair,
also,
Vash was an archaeology thief.
I
True,
guess
but
it
was she an
also-
archaeologist?
Archaeology does toe the line between theft and study, doesn't it? Because you're going into someone else's place and just taking their
Oh, yeah.
things and just claiming historical significance and using that significance as justification to take their stuff.
Half the
which, you know,
looters in ancient Egypt were archaeologists.
Funny you should say that, Vanessa, because that's actually a thing in Canada right now, is trying to repatriate a lot of Indigenous artifacts and things. Like I showed Dan a picture of a certain totem pole in a mall in Scotland and stuff like that they're trying to get brought back here, because a lot of these things like ceremonial clothing and ceremonial headdresses and robes were taken and stuff like that. So it's funny you should say that, because you just reminded me, like, that's actually an ongoing issue right now in Canada. That's a big deal.
I think the same thing basically happened with like the Mona Lisa.
And then there was World War II. The Nazis pillaged a lot, and some of that still hasn't even been found.
Yeah. But talking about this just now, it also reminded me of from Doctor Who, the character River Song, who sort of like is a thief, but thieving from museums and stuff.
Okay, so next question. Boimler says he failed the Kobayashi Maru 17 times. Is there a hidden meaning to this? And for those that are tuning in, this is based off the whole thing that the number 47 crops up a lot in classic Trek. So is 17 the new 47? What do you guys think, Captain Mike?
I guess I'll cop out on it. I have no idea.
Fair enough.
Woof, right over my head. I'm going to pass on that. I don't know how to answer it.
Dan?
I'll respond with one word with 2 letters. No.
Vanessa?
I'd be interested to see if it is a breadcrumb. Like on Picard, there was one scene where there were like 1915 vintage bottle, and you moved 15 beads on the abacus, and you know, they just sort of like pull patterns out of whatever. So it would be interesting to see if it's an Easter egg. I don't really read into it too deeply at this point.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I mean, considering he's ranting when he says it too. I mean, who knows that 17 is the actual number? He could just be throwing that out there.
Well, okay, then it might not be the new 47, but it might be the new 42. The answer to life, the universe, and everything.
Yeah, but Boimler doesn't even think he's the answer to anything. Never mind life in the universe.
But he might be, if that, you know, that ship that someone took earlier in the series where they saw like a massive, was it a massive turtle or, you know, the strange things. Yeah, if that was all real, then Boimler really could be onto something.
I also thought he was just like disappointed in failing himself that many times. Like that doesn't sound like something he's proud of. It sounds like something that he's bringing it up in a fit of frustration. So it's like I've been doing this so hard, and I've been trying so hard to like be this person that Starfleet wants me to be, and I'm failing, but I'm here anyway. I think it was just another stake in that just sort of rant.
I think
and the researcher had the gall to reach out and grab basically the indicator of that achievement, takes away his rank, throws it on the ground, and stomps on it like a piece of garbage. I can't blame the guy for snapping. It was everything he worked for right there. Ah!
Also, I think it might have been cool if it then turned out that like Mariner has learned how to do a Vulcan mind meld, so she could use that to help canon.
Okay. Next question is, what kind of things can Rutherford's implant possibly do that we haven't seen? So this involves some speculation, Dan, so you get to go first.
Come back to me.
Okay. Vanessa?
I think it sort of gives him a different dimension to sort of process images. I don't know. It would really be difficult for me to imagine it having different functionality, super different than what Geordi has, where he has sort of like a infrared vision too, sort of like Predator. They showed that on like the view screen once, and Picard's just like really distracted from his mission because he's like, ooh, look at that. But but like I just really I think it's a callback to Geordi, but it would be really interesting to see in future episodes, like if it has other capabilities than what we've seen so far.
Yeah, because I remember you said that you think it could control his behavior. So that could be one aspect of it, and we don't know yet.
Like it's not just his eye; it's like over his head. Yeah. So it commands more than just his vision. It's his part of his behavior is dictated by it. It seems.
Captain Mike,
I think it's a really interesting plot device, MacGuffin, right? Like, so I mean, to define it too heavily is to kind of write yourself into a corner. Like, you know, like as you know, the rest of you guys have speculated. Like, it's an interesting thing, and it's an interesting way to explore his character. Like, what does this implant mean to who he is? Like, how does it affect him exactly? What kind of abilities? Because like you see this even with other characters in Star Trek, where they'll produce abilities as, you know, as the plot requires. Sometimes, you know, you find out new details about a character, and yeah, I think it's an interesting thing that he's got this device. What exactly does it do? I think it's better to leave that kind of open. Let the writers play with it. You could do some interesting stuff with it, definitely that way.
Dan, I'm back to you.
Well, I agree what's been said, but also I thought, well, maybe it's like capable of opening wormholes, black holes, and like, you know, like the artificially created black holes that you see made from red matter in Star Trek 2009, while creating like Rutherford into any chamber he wants.
I'm waiting for them to hack it. I'm waiting for somebody to hack it like the Klingons did with Geordi's visor.
I was thinking it might make quite a bit of sense if it is able to generate like the red matter black holes, because like you see it sometimes, like in this episode, it is colored red.
I got to be a stickler. It was the Romulans in Mind's Eye.
Sorry.
He was trying to assassinate a Klingon governor, though. So,
right.
I mean, you got a reason to say the Klingons.
Yeah, you're right. It's the Romulans. But yeah, I'm actually waiting for them to hack it, because from the first episode when I saw that, I'm like, if they don't hack it, they're missing out. If they don't hack it, they're missing out. I have weird priorities.
Would you be disappointed if it wasn't the Romulans but the Remans?
Well, Remans are technically species of Romulan, sort of. Kind of like Andorians in Anar.
Yeah. But yeah, would you be disappointed if it was Remans that hacked and not Romulans?
Nope.
Okay.
We haven't seen much of the Remans outside of Nemesis. It'd be nice to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's one thing I'm hoping with the cartoon format, that they can show some of these aliens, like, you know, so like in Deep Space Nine, where we got some character development out of Ferengi and Klingons, so they weren't so two-dimensional.
Yeah. Well, that's like on Lower Decks. Twice they've shown those three-legged people. The lady who runs the Dove was three-legged, and then wasn't the guy on that like black ship or something that took them, or what, in the one episode? I think Boimler was messed up by a transporter, and it was the same kind of thing. He was a three-armed guy too, I think, and it was like, oh, they keep bringing the Arex character model in here a few times with this species. I guess it was because it was really neat design. Looked different. Wasn't just a forehead of the week. He had 3 legs.
Edosians.
Which ones?
They're called Edosians.
The people he said.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen also the whales too, so, which they haven't been able to really show before.
No, dolphins, you mean?
Yes, dolphins. All right. If it's up to you, what kind of spacecraft would you build? And we're going to go with Vanessa first.
I actually was hoping that Rutherford would build the shuttle that Tom Paris went transwarp in. That was really like, that episode is ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous. But I was hoping that they would do that. Personally, I would have built the Breen because I just think their ships are so different and interesting, and I want to see more of references to them personally.
Dan?
A Tsankatay ship, since we've never seen them on screen.
Captain Mike?
A Tholian ship, because they just look so neat. Made out of crystals. Something different, that's for sure.
For me, I'd have to say that I thought the Delta Flyer was a nice touch, but I don't know. I actually don't know what kind of ship I'd build. I mean, I like some of the Vulcan designs in Enterprise with the ring around it. Like, to me, that's really elegant. But at the same time, I love like the slim profile of the Andorian ships. And I like the fact that the Andorian ships are highly maneuverable.
Like, you don't have to worry about aerodynamics in space either.
I know, but that's
one thing to consider.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I saw a list recently, and it was ranking the most likely design for spaceships that would work in space. And the answer as to what was number one had me laughing, because it was the ship from Red Dwarf. It's considered the most feasible design for space travel. But yeah, I don't know what one I would build, but I do like the idea. I did like Vanessa's idea there about building the one from Threshold, the shuttle, to go warp 10.
Which spacecraft was it from Red Dwarf? Was it Red Dwarf itself, or was it like Starbug?
No, it was the actual Red Dwarf itself.
Oh, okay.
Not the Starbug. The Starbug was actually considered a good design for a shuttle, though, if the legs could move, because insectoid is considered the most efficient design of body for most environments.
Never watched Red Dwarf before. Read about it lots, heard about it lots on like online forums and stuff, but I've never seen it.
Okay, so our next one. How do you feel about there being so many bleeped out swear words? Captain Mike.
I loved that scene. my brother was just like so into it. He's like, why are they bleeping it out? I want to hear what he said to the Ferengi. I want to know what that was. And I'm just like, dude, no, it's that's too far. Like, they already push it sometimes on this show. I don't think they want to go into full bore, like 5-alarm cussing straight on. I think he manages to get the word ass out at one point, but most of it's covered up in bleeps. Yeah, it's just, I think he was throwing some seriously harsh language. Like, he could probably give the Marines and aliens a run for the money in terms of the swearing he was pulling off right there. Just F, 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 F. I think every other word was that word, because they would always put the F at the beginning of them.
Dan?
I don't give a beep.
Okay, well, that's pretty straightforward. Vanessa?
I honestly would have been fine without it. I think it, like, one beep has a comedic effect, but when it's like every other word, it kind of like gets in the way of hearing what they're saying for me. And I would rather just hear what Boimler has to say. He's clearly, agitated, and he's over the top in a way he's usually not. So I was kind of like, this is kind of getting in the way of me hearing what he's actually saying. But yeah, if it covers up dialogue to me, that's like, hey, why not just let him say what he's gonna say? I guess because they want to. It just went really super noisy outside all of a sudden. But yeah, I think they just wanted to keep it safe.
Yeah, well, my brother would agree with you, though. He wanted to hear what he had on his mind. Like, he wanted to hear the baggage unloading.
I kind of did too, and I was hoping for it. And for me, like Vanessa, I find the too many bleeps was too distracting for me. But then again, I have synesthesia, and so I see sounds. And so for me, like that, and that bleep is just a really awful sound to me. So it was a little bit much, and I would have liked to hear Boimler swearing, because I'm sorry, but that would be funny. I mean, let's take the most straight-laced guy, the Mr., yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, I'll get the trampoline. How high you want me to jump, sir? And now we're seeing him turn into like this drunk sailor on shore leave type vernacular.
It was a wonderful scene. Beeps or no beeps, I loved it.
Well, I think like it's just another step that like obviously like Lower Decks has used bleeped out swearwords before, and done like the scene with like the orgy and stuff like that in season 2 and stuff like that. So it's just, I guess it's like one more step where it's like making clear like this isn't a show intended for kids. Was one way it could be taken.
Yeah, it's definitely a sharper satire, that's for sure. Like, I mean, it's not like we haven't seen animated satire on TV before like this. I mean, Simpsons and Family Guy, they pushed the edge in the past. So I mean, yeah, they're definitely going there with it. Like, that's the concept. It's got a bit of an Adult Swim edge to things at times, definitely.
It kind of makes me think a little bit of South Park too. Because
Mm.
I know when South Park came out, it was like, now I look at South Park and I'm like, pfft. But when South Park came out, I was like junior high age, and I remember parents were all losing their hair over this show because it was just so vulgar and just pushing everything.
The movie especially, wow, really took it to 11.
I really did, although I did like their COVID special, just as an aside, because their COVID special actually makes you feel sorry for Cartman for once.
The Scientology episode, I finally understood what it was, because they keep flashing on screen. This is real. This is what it's all about. We're just visualizing it for you. It's like, whoa, Tom Cruise believes in some pretty wacky crap.
All right. Is Boimler going to regret the brig when he comes to sanity? So is he going to regret going to the brig? What do you think, Dan?
No, I think
No?
he'll get past it. He got past having to work on the vineyard, so he can get past the break. That's for sure.
What do you think, Vanessa?
I think it was sort of like he was almost looking at Ransom in a grateful way, like, thank you for putting me in my corner for a minute. He was like just so happy to just be like, somebody intervened. Thank you for like not allowing me to continue with this tirade. Thank you for like taking me away from this stressful situation. So I actually think being in the brig was maybe a goal he had subconsciously, personally.
Experience all that Starfleet has to offer in the literal sense. Take a tour of the brig if you misbehave. Captain Mike, what do you think?
Starfleet, get your Starfleet. He's definitely great at being a recruiting tool. Hey, if I can be like as confident as that guy, sign me up. Do you guys do engineering? It's just like, oh yeah, we got a whole division for that, man. Come on in. It's like the high praise I think he took off of Ransom at the end. Like, he didn't expect that at first. I think he thought he was, in the shit locker kind of thing, just to use a kind of a throw a custom my own in there. Because yeah, I think he thought he was in a bad spot, but he is not Mariner, so I mean, Ransom's not going to backhand him the same way. He's like, no, man, it's good to see you show some spine. You never do. Because he gives him crap a little while back, I think, about something along them lines, where he's like, you don't make yourself seen enough with me, man. That's why I don't notice you. He tells him point blank in an episode earlier.
It feels like Starfleet sort of reins in Boimler's neuroses a lot, like with being ordered around and everything. It gives him a sense of direction. So I think like them stepping in and being like, okay, that's enough, was like, oh, thank you. They saved me for myself again.
It's like a rudder for him, basically, is that authority figure giving him, structure on this is what we want you to do. And then he's like, so I was wrong? Did I do wrong? And then Ransom's like, no way, man. You stood up for Starfleet. I love it. I mean, I can never get enough of Jerry O'Connell in that role. I love that his wife is the first officer on Strange New Worlds. Star Trek couple. And they're both really great characters because I like Jack Ransom and I like Una Chin Riley. So it was cool to see him throwing Boimler a bone, and Boimler loved that. Like he seemed like he was beaming sitting in that cell while his friends were there with him. And it reminded me of other episodes where they kind of get into a bit of a group hug situation at the end and they're all supporting each other, even when one of them is kind of in a bad place, I guess. Because I think there's another one that kind of ends on that kind of a note where one of them is doing something and the rest of them all join in or something. I don't know. They've done that kind of mechanism a few times at the end episodes in the show. So, I mean, it's all running together in my mind, but like that they have a moment of togetherness and you can tell he is very satisfied with what happened. I mean, Mariner looked good. He got to get a little bit off his chest. I think it all worked out in the end. I mean, even Ransom said, no, man, good job. I liked hearing you stick up for the fleet.
Kind of reminded me of when Harry Kim first screwed up, had his first big screw up, and then and it changed how he viewed things. Like that was my first, because I've always, to me, Boimler reminds me a lot of Harry Kim with the eager to please thing.
And sort of like the moment of togetherness reminded me of like TUS and TNG.
Yeah, oh, definitely. It's like those things where it's like Kirk, Spock, and McCoy sitting together having a little rap session at the end of an episode around the chair. Those are some of my favorite moments in TOS, especially when we were talking about how Spock and McCoy throw barbs earlier, I think. And yeah, you get some great moments like that. And these guys, it's the same kind of thing, but a different dynamic. It's more like, we're all buddies. We all got each other's back, lower decks.
Yeah, and like Boimler thought that his like a membership in Starfleet was predicated upon being perfect 100% of the time, and to see that it wasn't, to see that he could make a mistake and be like embraced again was very reassuring for him.
Yeah,
I guess you see a sort of like different dynamic because like they're not the command crew as such, but like when we see like the ones that you mentioned, like Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, for example, were in TNG, who's like on the bridge similarly. You do see the command crew then, but I thought, yeah, like in this case, because it's lower decks, is sort of like taking, furthering on from like sort of a dynamic that was established in the TNG episode, lower decks, where they're junior officers of the crew, and they had together moments as well.
Yeah. Okay. Will Mariner leave the Cerritos to quench her thirst for adventure? Let's start with Captain Mike.
I mentioned the episode where Picard goes on a runaway and does that whole Galen research like journey thing. Maybe something like that. Maybe they come up with a 2-episode arc or something, maybe, and do something like what TNG had done in the past, or even on DS9 and Voyager, you see that sometimes where they do a double episode where it's like a double header and it continues like a long story arc. Could lead to something like that. Maybe that's why they're threading that in there. That's about what I kind of landed on at the end, because especially with the whole archaeology angle, it just kind of smacked of something similar to that, where she sucks her away to go help her do something. Then maybe the Cerritos gets involved. They have to help because the two of them get into a bad situation. I mean, who knows? Speculation could go all over the place on where that could end up going. But it is just interesting to see how they offered something like that.
Dan?
So what's the question? If she'll leave the ship?
Pardon?
What was the question?
Will she leave the ship to quench her thirst for adventure?
I don't think she will, but she may. But if she does, then it may remind me of when Trip does the same in Enterprise and goes onto the Columbia.
And the captain gets all those reports against him in the first hour.
But also, like, I remember, like, Stamets was intended to leave a Discovery before they went to the future and stuff like that. There's been a few things like that.
Vanessa?
I think she's clearly very conflicted because it's like she's been raised in Starfleet by Starfleet parents and is sort of a military brat, and like Starfleet has been her identity. And up until this point, she seemed to resent it. But then she goes into this stand. What's really interesting about this episode is like she's actually getting pride. It was like, why would someone that doesn't really want to be in Starfleet or follow Starfleet code be a representative for them on the outside trying to recruit people? And what I think an unexpected outcome of this, and maybe Ransom even planned for this, was for her to actually have pride in Starfleet. And then someone comes along and says, hey, there's another way to live. There's another way to exist. And you don't have to answer to anybody, you know? So it's like, I think a seed's been planted. I don't know if it'll necessarily like grow into her leaving, but it's like defining herself this way has been just sort of foisted upon her, and she's just sort of accepted it. But it's like maybe something else is in the works. Why not?
I'm kind of wondering if she might do like the Amish thing where when they get to a certain age, they get to leave the community for a while to see if they want to live in the outside world. So
Ramspringa, is that what it's called?
Yeah, I can't remember it because up here we don't have Amish, we have Hutterites, which are similar but not the same. But yeah, that thing where they go out into the world for a while and they get to experience the world to see if they want to live in the community. I kind of wonder if maybe she might do that, like when for instance, like Wesley went away for a bit and then came back, or like Dr. Crusher went away for a year and then came back. Like I'm thinking it could be something like that sort of scenario, but I don't think she would ever really leave the Cerritos because, like somebody brought up earlier, it was either Dan or Vanessa, that's still her safety net. She knows, like for the most part, she knows that she's got a certain amount of laxity there that she wouldn't have in any other job.
Yeah, something else I think of is when Worf steps away, to his culture basically draws him away from his job, and he ends up in the Klingon Civil War for a few months, and he's off the Enterprise D, and something of that nature maybe, where it's just like, again, similar to like where Picard leaves on his archaeology adventure, just a short arc thing, just, you know, a span of a few episodes, maybe similar to what Boimler did whenever he was on the Titan with Riker in the other season there.
All right, now there was one question I missed earlier on here, and I just found it again. What did the white void environment remind you of, if anything? Dan.
Me?
Yeah.
It reminded you of me?
Oh, it reminded you of you.
No, are you suggesting that it reminded you of me?
No.
Okay. I'm like, I'm no white boy.
No, you have sort of a whitish voice, but in terms of synesthesia, but otherwise, no. You do have a whitish voice, though. It's kind of hard to describe. It's a weird shade of white.
A whiter shade of pale?
Thank you. Yeah, we'll go with a whiter shade of pale.
Fascinating.
It sort of reminded me of, well, two things really, like the place where Q takes Picard.
Tapestry.
In Tapestry, yeah. But also, like, there's, like, the sharing of the catcher or whatever between DePaul and Trip in, like, season 4 of Enterprise. I think you sort of see, I guess, which it reminded me actually more of because it's like a mental joining sort of thing. Whereas like Picard and Q, it doesn't seem like they're mentally joined in that same way. But I also think like you seem to see like the same sort of Vulcan process of it in like the first or the second episode of Star Trek Discovery between Sarek and Burnham, but it looks like completely different and it's not a white boy. Or like blue and stuff.
Vanessa?
I think Dan mentioned this too, Samaritan Snare, where Q and Picard sort of, no, it wasn't Samaritan. Okay. But the one where Picard sort of confronts Q confronts Picard about like, well, if you didn't get into that bar fight, your life would be completely different. Yeah,
Tapestry.
yeah.
Tapestry. Yeah, they mentioned it.
Thank you. Sorry, Tapestry. Yes, and so like it reminded me of that sort of thing. So it's like, but it's sort of in the reverse almost. But it does, because it takes him back to that like accident, and then he sees like how his life altered from that point, but he wasn't aware of it, and he wasn't aware that it was the accident that made him into who he is essentially, you know. So I thought it was very much like Tapestry. Yes.
It also reminded me of there's some scenes in the Matrix trilogy that are like quite points as well.
Mike?
Guys, the Celestial Temple.
That's what I was going to
sorry.
say.
I was gonna say that. Come on.
I was
It's like
gonna-
because it goes. Yeah, he moves through time, different places, like time and space are kind of like move
Reveals.
around in his head. Yeah, so he moves around in his own psyche as it's basically a construct for him to interact with the prophets the same way that this is like a construct for him to like to interact with his suppressed memories that he's resurfacing in his personality. I thought that was interesting. Definitely strongly thought of that because, like, yeah, Cisco's always getting wrapped up in his own head. People are like, you just stood there staring into space for like a half an hour, man. What was going on there? Like, or he ended up lying on the floor prone or whatever. It definitely sends him into a bit of a haze where he's wrapped up in his own brain, and it definitely felt like it was, same type of idea, talking to yourself more or less in a way.
The other one it made me think of, besides the Celestial Temple, was a little bit with Archer and Daniels in Enterprise. Every time Daniels pulls him out so he can interact with him, and they're watching things go through the timeline and everything, and he's making these big reveals and stuff like that. It kind of reminded me of that too. So, in a sense.
Okay.
But okay, and then our second last question. Do you think there's more to Cisco's fate than what we've seen so far? We know there will be a crossover between Lower Decks and DS9 later this season. Do you think Cisco will return? And we're going to start with Vanessa.
I certainly hope so. That's what I've been wanting from Lower Decks since the jump. I've always loved Cisco. He's my favorite captain. Bring him back. He is amazing. And I would love to see how they sort of riff off of his character in Lower Decks. Like, is he going to have like different hairstyles in each scene? Like, is he going to have a goatee and then no goatee and then hair and then no hair and then hair again? Like, that would be great.
Because he does the chonky thin thing too throughout. You're muted, Vanessa.
I mean, I don't know about his body, but like just different hairstyles, different goatee. Like I would love it if it was just like a different thing in every scene personally. Or like,
but Avery fought so hard to look like Hawk, though. He fought so hard to look like Hawk again. He hated it when they made him have hair. I love watching that documentary. It gets right into it. The styling they put him in, he just was like, yuck. I have a look that I have because Spencer for Hire, he liked that look. And yeah, I guess he fought pretty hard for that. I mean, I get what you're saying with animation. You can play with it, but I know that Avery Brooks definitely, that's the look he wanted.
Dan?
I can't answer this. I already know the answer.
No, okay. Oh yeah, because you got the inside track.
Yeah. Or inside track.
Yeah, fair enough. On one hand, for me, I think it would be nice to have Cisco return, especially because he did say he would be back. Like, that was a big point. He said he was going to be back. Plus, realistically, I mean, after doing such a bang up job as a single dad, he knocks up a woman and runs away. Like, let's fix that because that
was definitely something that was brought up by Avery to say, like, I'm going to come back in order to like not play into the unfortunate stereotype that they had. So hopefully he reunites with his child. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. my brother, he just hates the way that leaves off in DS9. He's like, Jake got completely screwed over by the plot line in this show. I'm like, yeah, it was pretty rough. He just about loses his dad. Then he really does lose his dad shortly after that. Urgh. That was brutal. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I could probably just put in my 2 cents. It would be nice to see him return. I don't know. Is it something that like, I don't know, DS9 guys, like, I remember watching, I think, What You Leave Behind, and they seemed to be done with it. They kind of spitball a hypothetical season in that documentary, but it definitely feels like they felt like they told the story they wanted to tell. But I think definitely people have a right to ask, like, can we see more of them? Because people like the characters so much. The trick is with like writers and Avery Brooks, I don't know, it's tricky. Like, do the writers who are behind how they took him out want him back? Does Avery Brooks want to come back and record anything? Like, I don't know. It seems like he's he's
Done.
a ways out from Star Trek these days. Like, he's doing his own thing. So I don't know. It's a tough call. I mean, it would be a treat to see Cisco. Is it going to happen? I don't know. That's a question for a producer to answer more than me, but it would be nice. I definitely agree with that.
The documentary is called What We Left Behind, whereas the series finale is called What
We
Leave Behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if we're going to see some Deep Space Nine characters, I mean, they'll throw Worf in there for sure if they can get him, because even in the meme, he's popular returning character in the DS9 meme that goes around. But I honestly think it would be funny if they brought Quark more than Cisco. I would like to see Quark, or I would like to see Rom.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, Armin and Max they loved doing the show, and I could see them popping up in, voice roles. It would be thoroughly amusing to have the lower decks crew causing havoc in Quarks.
And also, he doesn't have to wear the makeup anymore. Like, he doesn't have to get in a makeup chair and sit there for hours.
Yeah, because both of them guys, they definitely loved playing those roles. But yeah, the ears and have them glued to your head some days, hell. The sweat.
It'll be interesting to see with the DS9 crossover too, like if they'll mention or how they'll treat Odo and Nog, if they'll be mentioned at all, because we don't have those actors with us anymore, and those were two of the most popular characters. I mean, Odo and Quark was just the best on-screen rivalry, frenemy thing ever. And Nog really, Quark and Rom really set the Ferengi apart as a legitimate race. But Nog was the one who really made Ferengi into something that wasn't a total joke.
Yeah, nothing but props to that, because you see people running around in Star Trek Online playing Ferengi Federation officers, and it's he makes that believable. He gives it context where it makes sense. It's a multi-species, paramilitary organization, and it accepts all people, even Ferengi who aspire to their ranks are going to be able to join. I mean, they're not all greedy merchants. He shows that very succinctly. I like the episode where he deals with some of his issues with the war and the PTSD, and with Vic, the hologram. Paper Moon was such a great episode. It's one of the best for me in terms of DS9, because it's one of those slower episodes that deals with the characters heavily, not so much pew pew space shootouts. It's just people talking about their problems, but with serious gravity to it. It was quite good, and yeah, it would definitely be nice to see some sort of homage to either character. I mean, Odo has an incredible character arc over the whole series. He grows a ton.
What about the augments from DS9? Do you think they should show up?
No.
Dan's trying not to laugh at me here. I was just thinking about it, because I'm thinking if they were to show up, how on earth would the writers treat them?
Yeah, that's bad. It could be a really bad joke if they did it the wrong way.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because there is some potential there. there is some potential with those characters, but it would have to be done the right way. Otherwise, you're going to end up with like a caricature.
I mean, they kind of are caricatures
Yeah.
of like mentally ill folks already. So I would appreciate it if they didn't.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking about it, because I'm like, and the only reason I thought of it is because of who some of the writers are. I mean, because we know that it's Rick and Morty writers, and let's face it, Rick and Morty is not a show that's known for sensitivity or treating things delicately.
You're like you said, it's the modern envelope of South Park, stabbing you right in the guts and laughing about it. That's definitely a strong aesthetic in that show. Like, it's gonna hit you right in the face with controversy and then let you deal with it afterwards. So yeah, like, I'd agree with what Vanessa said. It could be a sensitive issue for some people, and making light of it the wrong way could really go way sideways.
Although they could bring Serena back, because she was at the end there. She had the surgery and she became more normal, like neurotypical.
Yeah, that's the thing. Normal.
Her story, though, is one that's kind of left a thread dangling, like, because we know she wanted to go out and finally find herself because she finally got the chance to. So
I don't think it was as intriguing a string as one that we actually like need to follow up on. I think that was a really messed up episode, and it's good that we don't bring it up anymore.
Well, if we're talking about people from, like, we were talking about DS9 here. Like, so if they do a port of call stop at DS9, meet somebody who's in charge there. Like, is Kira running the station now? Can we see Nana Visitor in a guest role? That'd be neat.
that could work. I know that Terry Farrell said she'd like Dax to come back, but I don't know how in the heck they'd bring that back.
Yeah.
Bring back Dax, but
Jadzia is dead.
Like they could bring back Dax, but they couldn't bring back Jadzia. Sorry, I'm trying to trying to make it work in my head.
Yeah, I don't think it would work for her. Nana's a way better bet. She was really funny in that documentary too. Man, you watch her in the credit roll and she's just cracking jokes. And like, what is it? Her and Ira Bear, just the way they have like a candor on camera. Like, she's got a sense of humor. I mean, get her a humor script, throw it at her. Say you're commander of, Deep Space Nine, and you're dealing with this gang of like ridiculous goofballs from this USS Cerritos ship. Could be pretty fun. I mean, she's definitely got a sense of humor, really good sense of play. I mean, you see her on camera joking around with Bear in that documentary, and it's really funny.
I'm kind of disappointed we won't have one character that we could have come back. Kai Wynn.
Oh yeah, that was sad news to hear about that. Yep, Nurse Ratchet gone to the sky now. See you later. Enjoy the afterlife, ma'am. You were a wonderful villain.
Yeah, she was almost a better villain than the whole Dominion.
She falls into a weird gray area, especially when you watch some of the earlier developments in Deep Space Nine, and it's like sometimes she's their friend, other times not so much.
She's their friend when it benefits her.
That's right, exactly. She's a total gray zone opportunist, and then eventually she transitions right over to, like, to use Star Wars terminology, full on dark side. Coast-emotion! It's like, oh, really? The dark book, the dark hold of the Bajoran culture. Like, just
she was going back to the comment that one of the watchers put earlier about replacing Bareilles' brain. She was the one who was pushing that too, like, keep replacing, and he's going, no, I can't. Bashir's going, I can't do that. This is morally wrong. Like,
it's just a shuffling tech zombie that's like barely alive anymore.
Yeah, so I up until this morning anyway, I was hoping with a DS9 crossover that we'd get some aspect of her back, like, just because she was such a great villain.
Well, I suggested that question for this discussion because, like, Cisco's actually mentioned in this Lower Decks episode Reflections, whereas like no other DS9 characters are.
And yet Cisco seems to be the one that seems to be the most done with it all.
Yeah, Avery has very, very vocally said, no, I'm on to other things. I loved playing that role, but I'm on to other things. Like you see it every time he's in a documentary interview. He's a jazz man. He's having a lot of fun making music these days, I think.
Yeah, he's the opposite of Shatner, who's 90 and saying, I'm still gonna do this.
I actually love Chaos on the Bridge. Fantastic documentary. That and The Center Seat that Gates McFadden hosted for History Channel. Also wonderful documentary stuff.
So would Cisco come back maybe with a different actor if they can't get Avery?
I wonder, is recasting something they could suggest?
No, that would be so disrespectful. I would absolutely hate that. They would no.
No Avery, no go. Maybe we get no Cisco then, I guess.
That would be fine. If it can't be Avery Brooks, then I would rather them not, because I think Avery took great pride in that character and actually like wrote things for it, and had a guiding hand in it. And I would hate it if they put somebody else there.
You're not wrong. I mean, they're taking the time with even just the smallest roles, like say Gomez coming back. Like, you get the actor because it works good that way.
Although they didn't for Echab in Star Trek Picard.
They didn't what?
They didn't cast the same actor, Manu Intiraymi, as Echab for Star Trek Picard.
Yeah, it's just part of it's endemic of the problems I find with that show.
That was
why.
But
they did it with Bruce Maddox too. Same thing. Recast him.
But I mean, too, we're assuming like the idea of Avery. We assume then that Cisco would come back as Cisco. Who's to say he comes back as Cisco? He is technically half prophet because of his mother, and he was taken up to the celestial temple where we know they're non-corporeal, they're non-linear time. What if it was Cisco but came back in a different form?
I'm waiting for Vanessa to do the body snatcher scream and point at you, man. Because, we shouldn't go there. No,
it's honestly just
it's a thought. No, I hear what you're saying, but I anybody but Avery Brooks voicing that character just would feel wrong.
Yeah, he is the prophet, and they go deep into it over and over again in Deep Space Nine. He's the prophet. He's the prophet. That one, the Cisco, and even the prophets beat us over the head with it. So I don't know. Yeah, it would feel weird if it was a shift in character. I gotta agree with Vanessa. Like, just no.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with Vanessa there too. I just threw it out there because that's one thing. Like, you always hear people talk about bring back Cisco, but they're always talking about bringing back Cisco as human Cisco. To me, it's always sat in my head that if he came back, who says he would have ever come back as a humanoid corporeal Cisco?
I like your suggestion though. That is really interesting because if a person's seen Babylon 5, Lorien or the Vorlons or the Shadows, they might look like a certain way to us, but there's like you say, a deeper aspect to them. They're like extra dimensional life forms, ascended to a certain degree. It's an interesting idea. But yeah, I guess it's just, I think a lot of loyalty to that character would seriously impair an idea that tried to go in that direction.
No, I totally agree. I think it doesn't help too. Like, we really do associate good acting with that role. And then when we change the role, it's like, well, why did you do that? It's not like Darth Vader, where if the guy playing Darth Vader passes away, they can just throw somebody else in the suit because it doesn't matter who's wearing the suit. We associate James Earl Jones with the character. And
he just sold his full voice catalog to Disney, so now they can just create Darth Vader voice forever and put whoever they want in the suit.
like Majel did for Star Trek.
Exactly. Perfect example of Star Trek doing the same concept. Yeah.
All right. So how many rank pips out of 5 would you give this one, Captain Mike?
I'm going to say I would give it 5. This character development plus that hilarious bit of humor at the end where he just snaps and jumps on desks and punches people and just dances around in a manic panic. it killed it for me. I thought, yeah, it's definitely a 5 pipper, gold.
Dan?
I'm loving the term manic panic.
That's what I used to dye my hair, is manic panic.
All right. So I was thinking like the humorous answer would be 17 out of 5.
Well, then I'm taking 42.
And the serious answer would be probably 4. Because I thought it's a pretty good episode, and I especially like appreciate I guess we were talking about before we went live, the sense of continuity in this episode is quite good, especially like following up on episodes that haven't had much continuity. But I think it still leaves room for growth, and I think that extra potential is actually a good thing. But nonetheless, it takes 1 pip away, I think. So yeah. 4.
I'm waiting for the day when Dan does 5 without anything, just 5.
You'd be waiting a long, long time.
I should buy a lottery ticket. It's more likely, right? Vanessa?
I think it's also 4. I'm really excited to see what, if any, sort of things come of the things that are mentioned here. Is Mariner going to switch up her career? Is Rutherford going to dig deeper into his past? Is Boimler going to lean into his sort of like not being a perfectionist and actually like allowing himself to be a flawed person? Like there's some things of consequence that happen here, and do they carry forward? That's really going to be the measure of it. I thought it was hilarious. I love the butt bugs, the conspiracy reference, just so ridiculous. I mean, they were really neck bugs, but whatever, but it was great. I thought it really like did the funny thing, but not at the expense of growing the characters.
I think that guy's got butt bugs. Yeah, that was priceless.
That was something, all right. I would say 4 only because when they did mention Cisco, for me, that kind of was like, but knowing that Avery's done with Star Trek, that was kind of like, why would you tease that when so far it's not really a possibility? That was the only thing that bothered me about it. Other than that, like Boimler's rant was absolutely beautiful. I really liked that. And I liked seeing Mariner actually like doing her job for once. And so, yeah, I mean, Boimler, we saw more of him as a character. We saw more of Rutherford as a character. About the only one we're not seeing much character growth in so far is Tendi. So she's still kind of off to the side, which I think for me is the other reason why I won't give it 5, because Tendi keeps kind of getting pushed aside, it feels like.
Yeah, you know what? I'm totally going to agree. Yeah, lack of development with her. It's similar to when I watched the 3rd season of Orville. I like Tala Kiali on that show. She's the security chief. And it was the same thing. The character just keeps getting, here, you're going to sit in the background and be a supporting character.
Well, they
somebody else's
sort
story.
of
It's
put her in the position in one episode. It's like being the science officer, the science sort of representative for one of their missions and stuff. But since then, aside from her career, it's just been like she's the naive, silly one, and it'd be really nice.
They offered clues about her background in the Orion Society before, and it was like that was so interesting. It was like, what? She had a bad MO before? It's almost similar to what Rutherford's got. She had a reputation that was a lot different than where she is nowadays. So, like, let's find out more about it.
Yeah, it feels like they don't know what they're doing with her, if that makes sense. It's kind of like whenever they write kids in Star Trek.
I think there was another question about the archaeologist woman.
No.
Like, was it morally right or wrong for Mariner to save her contact details, and why?
Keeping her options open. I don't think there's anything morally wrong with that.
Exactly. It's like Picard gets an offer from Richard Galen. Come do research with me. Leave Starfleet. Whatever. It's the same thing. He wasn't duty bound to delete the message. Galen's allowed to give him a job offer.
I thought it's interesting that you see, I think you see like a picture of her in her Starfleet uniform, And yeah, I appreciate like the background that you get for her character and Boimler this episode.
I don't think it was morally wrong. I mean, there's nothing wrong with keeping a contact. The only time I would see it being morally wrong is if she goes and does something and doesn't inform anybody, which is Mariner. So, although she's under Ransom's thumb right now. So, and sorry for missing that question. I just looked, it was in the group thing, but not the collated list. So that's why I missed it. I'm sorry. My apologies. But I think that's everything. So thanks to the panelists for joining the discussion. We hope that you, the viewers, have enjoyed the chat. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the episode. Please remember to like and smash the subscribe button. And we'll see you next time on Subspace Chatter. Trek you later.
Smash that subscribe button.